Hello, this is Ricky Pound back with another video on Meissen porcelain. Today we're going to be talking about Freemasonry and Meissen porcelain, and in particular a series of figures that were done in the 1740s onwards to do really with the Mops-Orden, and I'll talk about them in detail about what they represent and how often they were seen in combination with a pug dog. In this particular presentation, I will be talking about my Meissen figure, which is the one on the right hand side, which is early 20th century. It's very much based on the Masonic figures from Candler of the 1740s, of which we can see examples on the left hand side. We've got the Mason on the right hand of that particular photograph, beautifully dressed. We have got a wool apron. He stood on this pedestal, which is finely painted with harbour scenes, and his wife or his partner is on the left-hand side with the pug dog, again stood on this very beautifully painted pedestal. I just wanted to start off by comparing my Freemason and his clothing to that of a Freemason of the 18th century from around 1750, and you can see how closely they align in terms of their clothing. We have this white wool apron, which is the earliest type of apron, surrounded here by a blue trimming, and the blue trimming has been linked very much to the craft degrees, or the first 3 degrees of Freemasonry. If you look at their feet, you can see these lovely black shoes with these buckles on, and they are very similar, and we will see them in detail in the next slide. And here we have a close-up of those shoes. You can see the metal buckles near the top and the ends of the shoes slightly turned upwards. And here we have a lovely pair of photographs showing the features of the face. There is so much detail here. Meissen were brilliant when it comes to the detail of the modelling, but also the colour palette that they applied to the faces and the uniforms and outfits. This one, as you can see, has even got a little bit of colour to his face. He's got these red lips and these deep staring eyes. You've got a lovely tricorn hat as well to this particular gentleman. Now you will notice to the right of the figure we have this pug dog stood on a pedestal. Now, very interesting to find that many of these Masonic figures from the 1740s and 1750s are found in combination with the pug dog. Now, you may ask why that is, and that is all to do with something that happened in the 18th century, which was effectively a papal bull against Freemasonry in 1738. And the Pope had basically declared that if you were Catholic and you were a Freemason, they were incompatible, and you had to basically resign from your Masonic lodge. Now, this was not really taken seriously by many of the countries in Europe, and could only really be enforced in those countries where the Papal Inquisition were based. So we're talking Italy and Portugal. In Italy, for instance, the Masonic Lodge in Rome, which was predominantly Catholic, had to close down. It was also Jacobite, but it did reopen under a different name. And so the pug appears to have been used around this time to show the support for this particular type of Freemasonry, and it was known as the Mops-Orden, or the Order of the Pug. And quite unusually at this time, it was a lodge of adoption. By that I mean it had male and female Freemasons. Now, it used to be seen as a little bit of a joke, although it was quite long-lived until it was outlawed and spread to many countries. And recent research has discovered that actually there was many Protestants within these orders as there were Catholics. And many of the females within the lodges were actually married to men who were in fully established Masonic lodges. So this was actually a proper, not a quasi Masonic lodge, and it was an important type of Freemasonry as well. So here we have some examples of the art of the Order of the Mops. Mops basically is German for pug. Now, on the left-hand side, we can see the Frontis Piece from one of their publications. And if you look carefully, you can see two ladies with a pug dog. Now, one of the elements of the initiation was to actually smell a dog's backside. There was also another piece of initiation where you had to scratch at the door and bark like a dog. Now, these sound very strange to us today, and I think it must have been quite strange to them as well, because soon after their formation, they dropped some of these more strange and radical elements to the ritual. And here we can see a close-up of that Frontis piece. We've got the lady there. She may be hoodwinked, and by that I mean that she is basically blindfolded, and you can see the pug dog there held by the other lady held up to her. And on the right hand side we've got a lady with a mirror and various other things. She may also have a fan, and various other men and ladies stood around with their swords drawn. And here is another detail from that Frontis piece. We have here some pretty well known Masonic symbolism from the day. You can see the two columns in the centre. They are known as Jachin and Bows, and they are the two pillars that stood on the forecourt of Solomon's Temple. And of course, Solomon's Temple is the building where all the architectural metaphors and language from Freemasonry come from, and the house at the top that you can see may well be a modern depiction of Solomon's temple. I just wanted to show you some of the material culture gained really from this particular Masonic order. This is a lovely example of a box, maybe a pill box, maybe something slightly larger, from around 1738 onwards, and it shows that the bearer of this particular box was a member of this Masonic order of the Mops-Orden. You would open the lid, for instance, and you'd see the two pug dogs painted inside, but of course once closed you'd have no idea that they were a member of this specific Masonic order. Again, it is from 1738, and I'll just read you the description given to it by the auction company that sold it. All the Meissen boxes marked with triangles were produced in the period immediately following the suppression of Freemasonry throughout the Roman Empire by the bull of Pope Clement XII in 1738, which banned membership of the Freemasons to Catholics. The triangle is therefore almost certainly a secret indication of Masonic membership. This box was clearly supplied for a member of the Mops-Orden, a clandestine replacement for Freemasonry in aristocratic society. And here we have another representation of two Freemasons of the Order of the Pug. They are by Candler from the 1740s, beautifully painted. They've got their tricorn hats there. They've got their white lamb's wool aprons. You can see set squares suspended from their necks, and you can see the pug dog near the figure on the right, just down by his legs. You've also got a pedestal with what appears to be a globe on it and a fallen column to the left. And here we can see one of the Freemasons with a Masonic gesture. He has his finger raised to his mouth. This is a suggestion for silence and secrecy to protect the secrets of the craft. This gesture, as we will see in the next slide, comes from Egyptian symbolism. And here we have three examples of the classical entity Hippocrates, sometimes known as Horus, with his finger raised to his mouth. As I've said before, this was a childhood gesture, but the Greeks mistook it for a gesture of secrecy, and that's how it passed through into Freemasonry. Now, the figure on the right holds much fascination for me, particularly in my own Masonic research into art of the 18th century. You'll see that this figure appears to be producing two fingers, one to his nose and one a little bit higher. What this actually symbolises is open compasses, which of course is one of the main symbols of Freemasonry. Now, if you look to the figure on the left, you will see he's actually got a pair of compasses which he rests on a globe. So this symbol is literally replicating the open compasses of the Masons. Now, the Masonic gesture of open fingers replicating compasses can actually be seen in London at Chizik House, where you have 18th century paintings by William Kent, which have been identified as containing much Masonic symbolism. So in the centre of the Red Velvet Room, you've got this long panel. At the one end, you can see Mercury presiding over the liberal arts below, and if you notice, you'll see that his fingers are open to replicate compasses. He's indicating to a lady down below who in one hand holds an oversized set square, and you can see that she's also replicating open compasses with her fingers to the god up above. And using this example again, you can see dangling from his neck you have the set square, and most prominently the set square can be found in one of William Hogarth's paintings known as Night, where two Freemasons come home from the Masonic Lodge, and you can actually see the set square dangling from a silk hanging around the neck. Now, returning to my own Freemason, Meissen certainly didn't skimp on the detail on the back of their figures. So here I've turned the figure around and you can see the ruffles, for instance, in the orange jacket. You can see the tree trunk on which he is resting, and you can see the pug dog as well with its green collar. As I said earlier, Meissen were absolutely superb when it comes to modelling and the details and the colours themselves that they applied, all hand painted, to these models. I think it would be fair to say that the pug dog is one of the major emblems of Meissen porcelain. It's one of the figures that it is well known for. I also have a second pug dog. Here she is, beautifully sculpted, beautifully painted. She dates from around 1760, and on her base you have the cross swords with engorged pommels, with a carved reference number as well. So there they are together. If you are interested in learning more about the Order of the Pug and dogs within Freemasonry, I can recommend these two fantastic books. Porcelain Pugs of Passion is full of gorgeous images of pug dogs, all the way from 1740, and the one on the left, Freemasonry and the Visual Arts, tells the story of the Mops-Orden, with recent research, as I noted earlier, saying that many of the Freemasons within the lodges were Protestant and Catholic, and that many of the men also belonged to other lodges. And again, if you are interested in pugs within Freemasonry, and in particular the Mops-Orden, I do recommend that you check out these two books by Professor James Stevens Curl, who has produced around 40 books in total on architecture, and is not only an expert on the various different styles of architecture, but an expert on Freemasonry as well. Thank you for listening.